It's the Brad and John Show.
Once again, an air-free show where Brad, working the board, makes absolutely positively no mistakes. Right, John?
Well, and if you're listening live, Brad, starting yesterday, I started adding a listen live link on my website. And you know what? From what I hear, folks might have been able to get a chance to hear our theme song again.
Yeah, because we change things around. We've gone through a number of different things. Okay, what do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about the last thing we talked about was the Nelly thing, okay? Now,
or we could talk about, we got to talk at some point about the guy getting his gun stolen for going to mass.
Let's talk about the Nelly thing first. Okay, now, what's interesting about this is I have made the comment, I think I talked about this one time before, I used to skate at Saints roller rink. Do you remember me talking about this?
Yeah, I do, and that was off of, what road was that off of, Brad?
It was off of Warson. It was like off of Page. I think it was like halfway between Page and Olive. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we looked it up before. Okay, so that region. Okay.
Saints Roller Rink there was a recording studio there, and this is where supposedly the original tracks for a lot of these songs were done for Nelly, and I believe the guys that owned the roller rink, or I don't know how the deal was. I can't remember. There was some connection between the roller rink and these two guys who had signed Nelly. And if you know what we're talking about, a bunch of people. Originally, it was a bunch of people. A lot of it was. And aren't some of the St. Lunatics suing him as well too? Is that what the deal is?
Yeah. They're at a number of them are at the middle of the dispute.
Right. They're claiming that they were owed that Nelly either put this in writing or verbally said, "Hey man, when we make it big," I mean, I'm just paraphrasing. "Hey, when we make it big, I'm going to take care of you guys." Essentially, it's what isn't that sort of how the suit boils down? And now they're saying, "Well, he didn't."
Nelly allegedly gave his word that they would get compensated.
Right.
For that, especially for that first big album.
Right. And the interesting thing about that was, do you know what a diamond record is? And you don't even have that anymore because nobody sells
10 million.
A diamond, I believe, is 10 million, and a double diamond is 20 million. Okay. Nelly's album was one of a very handful of hip hop. Matter of fact, I don't think it was one of the first, but it might have been like the first 5 or 6 hip hop records that went diamond, which means they sold over 10 million copies of it. We talked about this a couple weeks ago that I heard the producer, the guy who was the A&R guy who signed Hootie and the Blowfish, talked about at one point in time, I think it was Atlantic Records, were so disgruntled with Hootie and the Blowfish when they signed them. They were going to just shelve the album. They recorded most of it, and the executives go, "Oh, this album sucks. This is going nowhere." And this guy said, "No, you got to release it." And it became a double diamond, which is 20 million copies. And I remember the guy saying there's nobody that's ever done triple diamonds. Okay, so the interesting part of this is there were, 4 or 5 plaintiffs involved in this case originally?
Yeah, correct. So pretty much everybody in the Lunatics.
Right.
The St. Lunatics.
But now all of a sudden, some of these other people who are named going, "Hey, we're not involved with that. We don't know what they're talking about." So it's down to one guy now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Ali, who's one of the founding members. So the way that I read this, Brad, is that the other guys who chose to opt out, according to Nelly's lawyer, who is unsurprisingly Scott Rosenblum, according to Rosenblum, the other plaintiffs say that they don't want to be a part of the lawsuit. The way I read it, Nelly or somebody had a conversation with them and made right with those guys, and those guys are like, "Hey, we're not going to be a part of this anymore." But Ali, who once famously beefed with Chingy, which is a different story. But Ali is apparently now the only plaintiff, and he's suing Universal Music Group. So he's not suing Nelly, but he's suing Universal, as I understand it.
Well, now, isn't when you said when he made good with them, in other words, he stroked their palms with some cash, you think? Is that what it came down to?
I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing. I don't see why they would have either been named in it and not followed through with it. Like, I can't see them credibly claiming that they didn't know that Ali was going to file a lawsuit.
So
maybe they were like, "Yeah, go ahead and see what happens." And then Nelly or somebody reached out to him and said, "What do you want? How much does it take for this to go away?" I don't know. This is entirely speculation.
Well, I will be upfront and tell the story that John told me, that when this show goes national, we start making millions of dollars, that he's going to give me all the royalties and he gets none. So let's put that on the record right now.
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
I mean, I think we've been very public about that. To quote Bill Clinton, I think we've been candid about that. And whose side are you on in this beef, Brad? Are you Are you with Universal, or like, let's make uninformed choices here? Are you with Ali, or are you going to be with Universal?
Okay, I think this is my own opinion, and having somewhat seen some of the inside of the record business with my earlier years in the radio business, the recording business for the most part is just really a mess. And what's interesting now is the recording industry is going through this identity crisis. The same thing that, like, you know, all the TV networks, NBC, CBS, and ABC are going through, is that they thought they had all their bases covered. They thought they were in like a position of power, and now they're not anymore, if you get what I'm saying. To the point where
I do.
And it used to be to the point where, and this is a tribute to radio, it still is to the point where if you talk to most recording artists, and matter of fact, you can watch this on TikTok. I've seen some of these on TikTok, and I've seen some of these on YouTube as well, where they have people, these artists, these young artists, who are literally in a car, and apparently they've been told that for the first time ever, their song's going to be played on a radio station, and they're in their car, and the song comes on, and they go bananas because, oh my God. And once again, people still talk about, hey, nobody listens to radio anymore. It's still one of those things. We've talked about this with podcasters. If there were a dozen podcasters here in St. Louis, and you said to them, hey, I see your podcast, you're doing pretty well. How would you like to be on KMOX 5 days a week? Oh, yeah, well, when do I start? Am I kidding, right?
No, you're absolutely right, Brad.
Right, because it's still deemed to be a step above, and that's why, to the point where, and I think John, you'll agree with me when I say this, because we're trying to reiterate the fact that this is not just a podcast. That it is a podcast, and it's on our the bj.show. You can pull it up as a podcast there, or you can go to bjshow.video and pull it up as a video podcast. Although John just works his fingers to the bone with all the different effects he puts on our video. I mean, the editing he does is just amazing. But the point being,
did you see yesterday's videos, Brad?
Oh my God, it was incredible. And when you reincarnated Tawny Katane and you have her do that dance on those two new Jaguars that just manufactured. Oh, hold it, mate.
You didn't see yesterday's. Go ahead, though, Brad.
Tawny's dead, and they're not making Jaguars anymore. They're too busy making bizarre TV commercials.
But your point about radio?
Yeah, it's once again, it's still to the point where if you want, it's to the point where that is how you made it, and it's still in music radio. I mean, I know people who are in the music business, and they tell me this. They said, there's not a day that doesn't go by. There's not a day that doesn't go by that one of my email addresses, which has gotten to the point where I get too many emails on that, but it's gotten to the point where there is at least 3 or 4 record promoters sending me their group's records. They're either the producer or the promoter, or or it's a PR agency they hired and stuff like that. And quite honestly, we've played some of them in the past. When Shelley and I did the show, we had the one lady on, which I thought was fascinating. That I don't know if you've ever heard that interview before, and she did a song, which we still play, and she said to me, I don't have a website. And I go, how can you not have a website? And she says, I don't have a website. It's all social media. This one I went last week, not this past weekend, but the weekend before when I did my candidate's spiel, at candidate school. I said, look, I don't care what anybody says. You can say that social media is the king and stuff like that, but not having a website is like if you have a house, it's like not having a porch light, because of the fact, or maybe that's a bad analogy, but it's to the point where back in the day it would be someone saying, well, I've got a business, but I don't have a Yellow Pages listing. You don't what? You don't have a Yellow Pages listing? Because anybody who knows they're worth their salt in marketing knows nowadays that it's multi-channel. Am I correct when I say that, John?
You're right. You're right about that, Brad.
It's multi-channel. Some people are Facebook people. Some people are Twitter people. Other people are Instagram people. Some people still, and once again, when I did the candidate school, when Tom Smith, remember I said the 3 things, and even Bill Eigel said, 3 things you need, the basic 3 things to be a run for a candidate: direct mail, yard signs, and door knocking. And to the point where, and you mentioned that some people, and I said that to one of my friends, and her response was like, I don't even, it just goes right in the trash can. I go, well, it may go in the trash can for you, but a lot of people look at that. And it's not just like, 60 plusers, it's like my 4 kids. Each one of them is unique in the respect of what they listen to, how they get information, how they listen to, music, how they watch videos and stuff like that. They're all, same mom, same dad, same house. All four of them live in the same house. All four of them went through the same school district. And each one of them are different. And that's people. And you have to keep that in mind. Okay.
If you're tired of Brad ignoring your pitches via email, just remember you can go on Facebook Marketplace and buy your own radio tower.
Do you know who Debbie?
And then you can acquire a license and you can play your own music 24 hours a day.
Yeah, listen to that, Tracy. Do you know who Debbie Monterrey is?
Yeah.
You know who she is then, right? She's one of the morning anchors.
She's a long-time broadcaster.
Right. Okay. She posted this thing on her Facebook page the other day, and I'm going to talk about this briefly, about you don't call anybody on the phone anymore. You don't use the phone. I'm going like, okay, here we go again. It's these crazy things. It's like nobody should be talking on the phone anymore. Okay? But you know what? Once again, I do a lot of texting. I do emailing. I do a lot of phone calls because there's something about calling someone, hearing their voice, hearing their inflections in their voice, hearing if they're, sick, well, excited, bored, mad, happy. You know what I'm saying? There's something.
I do know what you mean. I don't think it's preferable, Brad, to like getting on a steam train or taking a carriage over to their house and having a conversation with them. But yeah, an old-timey phone call is fun.
Right. And her thing was, and get this, her little thing she put up was, before you call someone, you should text them first. Say, hey, can I give you a call? I'm going like, come on.
I actually agree with her in many regards. For example, in the old corporate days, I would always generally message somebody and be like, hey, are you around? I'm going to give you a call. Now, I'm with you, though, Brad, and that there's a lot of situations where a phone call is much better. And I'll give you another example. If you're having a strenuous conversation with someone, a business person, someone in your professional life, someone in your personal life, you don't get the context via text message. And as men, we send a lot of simple declarative statements that can be widely misinterpreted by females. So in that regard, I agree with you in that it's better to have that call on the phone.
But it's
better to have that communication on the phone.
It's just like not meeting face to face with people. I mean, I can tell you my career, and hopefully it's not over yet, but I can tell you, matter of fact, I had a face to face with someone yesterday that I won't give the details of this, but a company, or actually it's not even a company, it's a government agency that I've been trying to get something done with for years. And I had a face to face yesterday with a guy, and it went very well. And I essentially told him, look, I understand that I've been told by some of the other people that this is your philosophy. No, that's not really the case. I go, well, look, I want to do business with you. How do we get this thing going? We shook hands when we met. He showed me around. I was looking at a place we'd possibly gone to rent, and then we shook hands. We left. I felt good about it, face to face with the guy. You know what I mean?
And you wouldn't have had that on a Zoom call, is what you're saying.
Well, nor up until that point in time, my conversation with this guy had strictly been on email, and to the point where once you meet the guy, and what's interesting about it is, I asked him about his background, and he was somewhat taken aback. Not taken aback because, I go, hey, how'd you get in this job? And he tells me his background. He was a firefighter. He did this, he did that, and he even told me that, what he's doing right now, it's sort of a challenge. We had to take some classes to learn a lot of stuff, and I found that interesting. And now maybe he came away from that meeting going like, oh, that guy was a nosy SOB, or B, I like that guy because he was interested in me. How do you get people's interest? You ask them about themselves. You
ask someone about themselves, and they'll listen all day.
Right. And once again, it's not just like a fake interest. It's to the point where I find it fascinating on a daily basis, the people that I deal with, some of whom are in one industry, and I find out that they used to be in a totally different business, or that they used to, I have a couple friends of mine that I know, people that I know that used to be, hooked on drugs, and people that were alcoholics. Well, once again, they say you're a recovering alcoholic. You're never, a non-alcoholic, whatever that means. Okay, quickly before we get done with this segment, the story is this guy goes to him and his wife, they go to the Cathedral Basilica. Is that what it is?
Yeah. They go on a Sunday morning in October, and I don't have the story in front of me, but by memory here, they go to the Basilica. For folks who don't know, that's down on Lindell Boulevard, and kind of around the central rear end. And they park on the street, It's 9:30 in the morning on a Sunday. The guy puts his handgun in a center console, and he and his wife go in to mass, and they come out, and the gun is gone. So he ends up reporting it. He gets fined because I guess in St. Louis City, you're supposed to report your gun stolen within 48 hours. And I believe he went over that time limit. Anyway, as it turns out, he ended up getting fined by the city of St. Louis, and he in turn is suing the city of St. Louis because he says that according to state law, municipalities can't make their own gun laws about how quickly you need to report it, within 48 hours. I do have it in front of me now. And it says he says the city isn't allowed to prohibit him from leaving his gun unattended in his vehicle and can't force him to report it stolen within 48 hours. State law, his suit says, bars municipalities from making their own gun regulations. And the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment has long protected gun owners. So anyway, Brad, go to the city, leave your gun in the car, it gets stolen, you're going to get fined for it.
Well, the other thing was the law that he was disputing was the St. Louis City law states that if you have to have a locked container that's bolted to your car, like a gun safe or something like that, bolted into the trunk of your car or on the back floor of your car or something like that, and that's where your gun has to be. Now, the thing I found curious about it was he says he took, and that's the interesting part of it is he's a concealed carry permit holder, and if you know the law, you're not allowed to take your gun into churches, bars, schools and things like that. So he was being a doobie by taking his gun off of him and putting it in the center console. But the thing I thought was curious was he claims that he locked the doors of his car, and when he came back, the doors were still locked, but the gun was missing. How does that happen?
Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah, I mean, did somebody? Or I shouldn't say how's that happen. There's little tricks you can use where there used to be I don't know if it's anymore, but some of the little key fobs you could hit, and somebody could be around it, and they could essentially receive what that code was, and then they could essentially copy the code into their own little transponder thing, and then they could hit the button and unlock your doors. That some of the newer ones don't have that anymore, but I know that was the case in some of the older cars where you could actually. It was like the same thing. Remember that story years ago? One TV station does it, and they get great ratings. Every TV station in the country does it, where the reporters were driving down the streets, hitting their remote controls, and they're opening people's garage doors. Remember that?
Oh yes, yeah, that's fantastic.
Because of the fact that I remember a story years ago, and I think it happened somewhere in Missouri, where a subdivision developer, a builder, built a subdivision, and when he ordered all the hardware, so for some reason they checked all keyed alike, so every house in the entire subdivision had the same key. You could go to any house and open the door, which was sort of interesting. So wouldn't that be fun to find out? Oh, I can go to any house I want and open up the door. Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?